A secret they were never meant to hear wasn't just whispered in the hills of Tennessee. It screamed in silence. It happened in the summer of 1876. 5 sisters vanished overnight. No screams, no signs, no bodies. Just a locked door, 5 empty beds, and a town that never spoke again. This isn't folklore. It's not some dusty legend twisted by time. It's a case buried deeper than bones. And what I'm about to show you was never meant to reach your ears. Because this story doesn't end with missing girls. It begins there. It ends with ancient symbols, ritual sites, government interference, and the question every man asks but few dare to answer. What force controls what we're allowed to remember? This is not a ghost story. It's an initiation. Because if you keep watching, your eyes will never see the world the same again. And you won't just believe in hidden power, you'll start to feel it. Right now, you're standing on the edge of something ancient, something suppressed. Behind the mystery of the 5 Holloway sisters is a system, a machinery of silence that's shaped history, minds, and memory itself. And brother, if you're still here by the end, you'll understand why some truths are more dangerous than lies. Are you ready to go deeper? Then let me tell you about the town of Gallows Ridge, Tennessee, where girls disappeared and men lost more than just their faith. They lost their will to speak. Because the last man who tried to tell this story, his journal ended mid-sentence, right after he wrote, "They weren't taken, they were offered." Now, you'll understand why the ground there was never meant to be dug up, and why you were never supposed to know what happened that night in 1876. Welcome to the descent. They were offered. That final line wasn't written in fear. It was written in obedience. The town was called Gallows Ridge, a name that no longer appears on maps. Not by accident, by design. In 1876, it was a speck in the Tennessee hills. 1 dirt road, 12 homes, a schoolhouse, and a church that rang twice a day like clockwork, even when no one was inside. But there was something off about Gallows Ridge. The people didn't talk about the war. They didn't talk about outsiders. And they never ever spoke about what stood at the edge of town. A rotting 3-story plantation house surrounded by dead trees that no one ever seemed to go near. And yet no one dared remove. It was called the Larkwood House, though the name had been scratched off every town record. No one lived there. And yet, every Sunday morning, fresh lilies were left at its rusted gate. By who? No one ever said. But everyone knew. The Holloway family had 5 daughters. Their father was the town pastor. Their mother, a midwife, the kind of woman who read old texts in candlelight and stitched prayers into her daughters' dresses. They were good girls, obedient, all homeschooled, all pale, all strangely quiet. Locals said they spoke in unison sometimes, not in games, but in warnings. Once, a farmhand claimed he saw them drawing circles in the dust behind the schoolhouse, whispering things that weren't in any Bible. He told the sheriff. 3 days later, the farmhand hung himself in his barn with no note. Only a strange symbol carved into the wall behind him. That was March. In June, the 5 girls vanished. One thunderstorm. One night, the Holloways locked the door. In the morning, the girls were gone, and the Larkwood house had fresh footprints on its porch, too small for adult shoes, too perfect to be weather-worn. The sheriff investigated for 2 days, then resigned, burned his notebook, and left town without a word. No search parties, no funerals, just 5 empty beds, and a church bell that stopped ringing for good. The town closed itself after that, slowly, systematically. One by one, the neighbors moved away. The post office closed. The school burned down. And the last family to leave? The Holloways. But they didn't go far. They went underground. Literally. And that's where it begins to get darker. You've heard of haunted houses. But this wasn't haunted. It was hungry. The Larkwood house didn't have blueprints. No county record. No builder's name. Ask locals back then who built it. They'd all say the same thing. It was already here. Older than the town. Older than Tennessee. Some said it was Cherokee land, but even the tribal elders wouldn't speak of it. One elder, pressed by an out-of-towner, only said 7 words before turning and walking away. The ground still remembers what it tasted. The house was made of blackened wood, older than any surrounding tree. Not from fire. From age. Timbers warped like bones twisted under pressure. The 3rd floor had no staircase. Just windows. No one ever saw them open. But lights flickered up there, despite the home being abandoned. And then there was the basement. If you even want to call it that. The sheriff who quit after the Holloway girls vanished. He had gone inside. Just once. According to a final letter found in a train station locker, he claimed the basement went farther than it should. He wrote, "There's no way to measure how deep. It turns, spirals, smells of iron and sweet rot, and the walls. They hum, like they're alive, breathing." He was never seen again after mailing that letter. Here's what's worse. A Civil War surveyor's journal from 1861 was found decades later in a collapsed mine, 40 miles east of Gallows Ridge. In it, a single line was circled in charcoal. "Avoid the hills south of the Black House. Earth sings there. Men disappear." Men disappear, like the 5 soldiers who deserted their post and were last seen walking in that direction in the winter of 1865. Or the 3 federal agents who came in 1939 to document the unrecorded township, and were declared missing 2 days later. One boot was found outside the Larkwood gate, with fresh child-sized handprints pressed into the leather. Are you beginning to see it now? This isn't just a story about 5 girls. It's about a structure, a place, something buried in the foundation of the land itself. And the further you go down, the less human it becomes. This is where we begin peeling back the first layer of the mask. The one they built around you, brick by brick. Ready to go deeper. What if I told you silence was a language? Not absence of sound, but presence of command. Not forgetting, but programmed obedience. After the Holloway sisters vanished, Gallows Ridge didn't mourn. They complied. No flyers, no questions, no outcry. As if the town had received instructions, not tragedy. And those instructions weren't written in ink. They were encoded in ritual. You see, trauma isn't just an event. It's a system, a method of shaping collective memory by removing it. That's why no death certificates were filed. That's why no one ever spoke their names again. Their school books were burned, their toys buried. Even their birth records quietly erased from the county registrar by a man who hung himself the same night he finished. He left a note. 5 words. The girls are not gone. Let that sit with you. Now here's where it begins to turn. There's evidence that every townsperson signed a document weeks after the disappearance. A confidentiality decree drawn up by someone outside the region. Military paper. Federal seal. But why would Washington care about 5 missing girls in the middle of nowhere? Unless they weren't missing. They were taken. And more importantly, they were used. You know what's more powerful than secrecy? Shared silence. It becomes culture. It becomes identity. It becomes law without legislation. That's how mass amnesia is manufactured. And this wasn't the first time. 7. Salem, Massachusetts. 5 girls claimed by spirits. Their names vanished from all legal records by 1701, 1823, Wyoming Territory. 6 sisters disappeared from a Mormon settlement, same footprint pattern, same ritual site, same symbol carved in bone near the hearth. 76, Gallows Ridge, 5 daughters, no graves, no questions. Same cycle, same silence. Because behind every one of these vanishings is a pattern. Not chaos, but E sign. You were never meant to connect these dots. You were trained not to. And every institution you've trusted, schools, churches, governments, have been teaching you what to forget more than what to remember. This isn't just history, it's ritual containment. And you've been living inside its walls since birth. But once you see the script, you don't unsee it. And brother, you're seeing it now. Every town has secrets. But some families are the secret. The Holloways weren't just devout. They weren't just respected. They were chosen. But not by God. You've been told they were Christian, small-town, God-fearing folk. But that's just the surface. Their real faith wasn't spoken. It was handed down through rituals older than the Bible, whispered in a language even Hebrew doesn't touch. The mother, Margaret Holloway, wasn't born Margaret. Her original name has been scrubbed from every public ledger east of the Mississippi. But in a rare archival finding, one letter, sealed in beeswax and tucked into the spine of an 1849 Anglican hymnal, she signs her name differently. M.H. Servant of the Ninth Veil. Ninth Veil. That's not scripture. That's occult hierarchy. Specifically, the ninth layer in a Babylonian rite system buried after the burning of the Library of Alexandria. It refers to vessels, specifically female vessels born into bloodlines deemed favorable for transfer. Transfer of what? That's where it gets black. In Eastern occult systems, the female womb is seen as a gateway, not for life, but for incarnation, not reincarnation. Insertion. Insertion of non-human intelligence into biological vessels. The 5 sisters weren't ordinary girls. They were bred, isolated, conditioned, fed on specific herbs, exposed to astronomical alignments, and, according to one hidden affidavit, taught how to open themselves from the inside, not emotionally, physically. In fact, the 5th daughter, Sarah, was born on a blood moon that coincided with a solar maximum, something astronomers refer to as a double eclipse gate. Rare. Powerful. Records show the Larkwood house basement had one item no one could explain. A stone birthing chair, carved from an unidentifiable mineral. It vibrated. It left no fingerprints. And it faced north. Not magnetic north, but true north. Lined with something buried deep beneath Tennessee limestone. This wasn't about family. This was about blood purity. The Holloways weren't victims. They were guardians of a ritual lineage older than the land. And when the daughters vanished, it wasn't because they were taken. It was because their time as vessels had been fulfilled. Let that sink in. Next, we ask, for who? Every religion hints at God. But what if the earliest ones weren't worshipping the divine, but obeying something that claimed to be? The force behind the Holloway ritual wasn't demonic. It wasn't angelic. It was pre-human. And worse, it was invited. In ancient Mesopotamian tablets long dismissed as mythic metaphors, there are references to a being not of heaven, not of earth, but of the space beneath them both. They called it Aluthan, the sleeper below the threshold, the thing that does not eat, but remembers being fed. Scholars have debated for centuries whether Aluthan was metaphor for death, but those same tablets describe ritual mechanics nearly identical to the Holloway case. 5 female vessels. Bloodline selected for its dream resonance. Sacrificial alignment on a lunar solar convergence. Transfer location beneath a Trinity-rooted structure. 3 stories, 1 house, Larkwood. Let me be clear, this isn't spiritualism. This is technology disguised as theology. The Larkwood house wasn't a home. It was a transceiver. Built to interface with something beneath the crust of the earth. Something older than language, using the minds and bodies of the 5 sisters as biological key codes. In 1954, a geologist named Peter Langford took seismic readings of the Gallows Ridge area. He logged something anomalous, a hollow chamber 600 feet beneath the site, measuring nearly 200 yards wide, perfectly circular, with a center column that pulsed, not vibrated, when equipment was near it. The report was never published. His assistant, found dead 2 weeks later in a river with her tongue removed. Langford disappeared within a year. But his journal, recovered by a niece in 1992, contains one last line. It's not dead. It's listening. The girls were dial tones. Now think about that. If the sisters were vessels, if the rituals were keys, if the house was a transmitter, then what answered back? And why does every government agency that stumbles onto the site classify the records under bioacoustic warfare protocols? Because this isn't about ghosts. This is about contact. And once contact is made, it doesn't end. It only waits. Sleeps. Until the ritual is repeated, rituals don't die. They hibernate. And once a ritual proves successful, it becomes a template. You think the Holloway event was a one-time tragedy? An isolated mystery? Wrong. It was phase 1. Since 1876, the Holloway Protocol has been repeated, refined, relocated, renamed, hidden behind false flags, cover stories, and psychological distractions. Let me show you. 1933, Bavaria. 5 orphan girls vanish from a sanitarium outside Berchtesgaden. Days later, seismic activity in the region registers a pulse. Not a quake, but a measurable frequency mimicking infrasonic blood resonance. Nazi officers seal the site and declare it off-limits. Paperclip scientists would later refer to it as the second key. 66, Point Pleasant, West Virginia. 5 women, all under 20, all of mixed Slavic ancestry, reported missing within the same 72-hour window. Locals remember red lights in the sky. The Mothman legend is born. But dig deeper. You'll find unmarked FEMA personnel on site within 48 hours. Blood traces found on church pews 2 miles from the collapse zone. 2007, Aleppo. 5 adolescent girls from 5 separate villages, all daughters of Syrian mystics, reported missing during a lunar eclipse. The site? A buried Byzantine crypt uncovered by an oil company and quietly recovered days later. The excavation team vanished. No photos. No headlines. What do these events share? 5 vessels, astral timing, sacrificial geometry, and the unmistakable signature of a Luthon resonance, low-frequency tones heard by nearby residents, causing nausea, sleep paralysis, and in some cases, hallucinated speech. Not one media outlet has made these connections. Because they are forbidden to. And because they are part of it. Now here's where it cuts deeper. The Larkwood house never stopped transmitting. In 1998, an anonymous ham radio operator in Tennessee intercepted an ultralos broadcast from beneath Gallows Ridge. Just 3 repeated words, pulsing every 66 seconds. Bring them again. Bring who? You already know. The Holloway blueprint wasn't buried. It was institutionalized. And somewhere, right now, 5 new vessels are being prepared. You need to understand something, and understand it now. This isn't history. This is a countdown. And it's almost 0. But here's where you choose. If you're not just watching but awakening, comment this phrase twice in the comments right now. I hear the hum. Say it once. It's curiosity. Say it twice. It's commitment. That phrase isn't just for the algorithm. It's for you. It locks in the shift, marks you as one who can no longer go back. If you haven't felt it yet, you will. That crawling unease, that whisper in the back of your skull telling you to look away. That's not fear. That's programming. You were trained to reject this. From the moment you learned to speak, you were placed in a system of mental filters designed to keep the truth just outside your reach. Let me break it down. There are 3 layers of psychological control that have governed your perception since childhood. Layer 1. Semantic framing. Words don't just describe reality, they define its limits. You were taught to say ghost when something unexplainable happens. Coincidence, when patterns appear. Crazy, when someone sees too much. Those aren't definitions. They're prison bars. Linguistic chloroform. Every time you labeled something just a dream or your imagination, you reinforced your own blindfold. Language is the first gate, and you were locked behind it before you ever knew the door existed. Layer 2. Perception rehearsal, through media, TV, games, school books. You were slowly inoculated against truth. You were shown monsters as fiction, conspiracies as jokes, secret societies as entertainment. Why? So when you see the real thing, you laugh, you dismiss, you forget. That's not ignorance. That's pre-installed disbelief. The human brain is like clay, and by age 10, your reality matrix was set. Set by those who never wanted you to look under the floorboards. Layer 3. Emotional sabotage. And here's the deepest cut. You were taught that knowing these truths makes you broken, that obsessing over hidden knowledge is paranoia, that mistrusting systems is a symptom, that asking too many questions means you need help. But tell me this. Who profits when you stay afraid of your own awareness? Governments don't fear armies. They fear awakened minds. Because once you see the grid, the true design, you are no longer a puppet. You're a player, and players change the game. Now think about how this connects. The Holloway Ritual. The repeating pattern of 5. The ancient resonance under our feet. It's all right there, but they trained your eyes to skip over it. Until now. Now you're rewiring. And with each section, you're peeling back the layers they spent generations building. This is dangerous knowledge. Not because it harms you, but because it frees you. You've followed the trail this far. Now we step onto forbidden ground. Not symbols, not theories. Names. The ones who kept the Holloway system alive. Who didn't just protect the ritual, they industrialized it. This is the part they most want silenced. Let me be clear. There are 3 core institutions that have embedded the Holloway pattern. The 5-vessel sacrifice, the resonance gate, the underground frequency ritual, into the global infrastructure. Not as myth, as active protocol. DARPA, Defense Advanced Research Projects Agency. Publicly, it's the birthplace of the Internet. Privately, it's the nerve center of black site consciousness experiments. In 1977, DARPA funded Project Inkwell, a program that tested audio-visual subliminals on thousands of American children. The stated goal? Subconscious resonance mapping. The real purpose? Identifying which minds could be used as conduits, the vessels. One internal memo declassified in 2003 contains the phrase, Holloway protocol shows promise when applied to adolescent female subjects with dream cycle synchronicity. Test sites proposed: Kentucky, Belarus, Patagonia. Think about that. They're not just aware of the ritual, they're weaponizing it. The Tavistock Institute. London. The psychological brain of the elite. Founded after World War I to study mass trauma and population response. By World War II, Tavistock had refined techniques for erasing memories, reframing reality, and controlling public emotional cycles. Their research papers refer to resonant imprinting, using traumatic events to embed ritualistic symbols and behavior into the collective subconscious. They don't need everyone to believe. They just need you primed to obey when it reactivates. Holloway wasn't a mistake. It was a prototype. 3. Vatican Secret Archives. Yes, the Vatican. Buried beneath the religious facade lies the WW, world's most comprehensive record of pre-Christian occult systems. One document, Codex Obscura 73, describes 5 sisters in the region of ancient Anatolia, chosen to sing open the stone that dreams. That's Holloway. The church knew. They preserved it. And when it reawakened in Tennessee, they did nothing to stop it. Why? Because power isn't about stopping evil. It's about controlling it. Now ask yourself, why would a defense agency, a psychological institute, and a religious superpower all converge on a single ritual system? What are they trying to open? Or worse, what are they trying to let out? There's a point in every ritual where the symbols shift. They stop being metaphors and become instructions. Everything the institutions built, the training, the silence, the vanished girls, has always aimed at one goal: to open the door. Not a literal door, a dimensional breach, a crossing point. Ancient cultures had names for it. The Sumerians called it Abzu, the deep gate. The Egyptians whispered of Duat, where voices walk without bodies. The early Coptic texts simply called it the listening stone, a place where reality folds inwards and echoes speak before they're heard. And in 1876, in Holloway, Tennessee, they almost succeeded. The ritual was designed in 5 phases, each one aligned to a resonance frequency, a harmonic binding rooted not in belief, but in physics. Let me walk you through what they did. Phase 1. The selection. 5 girls, ages 10 to 13. Each born under a specific planetary alignment, each with a bloodline traced back to pre-Roman Anatolia. This isn't superstition. It's genetic frequency attunement. Phase 2. The isolation. Each girl separated from her family, her identity ritually erased. Some believe they were drugged. Others say they were willingly prepared, told they were keys to the next world. Phase 3. The hum. On the final night, witnesses described low, vibrating tones that came from beneath the town's abandoned chapel. Animals fled. Windows cracked. And every clock in Holloway stopped at 3:33 a.m. The hum wasn't sound. It was a spatial resonance, a kind of sonic scalpel cutting through the membrane between our world and something older. Phase 4. The merge. One girl was heard speaking in reverse. Another wept blood. All 5 were seen walking into the field behind the chapel. And then they vanished. No scream, no struggle, no footprints leading away. Just a scorched symbol burned into the earth, like an urob, oros wrapped in 5 crescent moons. Phase 5. The opening. That's the part they've hidden. But one journal, found buried in a jar beneath the chapel's bell tower, records a final message. The song was sung. The gate looked back. The sisters are not gone. They are through. Through where? Into what? You've felt it before. In dreams you don't remember. In rooms that suddenly feel too cold. In the static between songs on an old radio. They didn't die. They became part of the hum. And now, the tone is returning. You've heard it. Not just once. Not by accident. It's in the startup chime of your devices. The looping tones in music that gets stuck in your head. The low, pulsing hum you feel more than hear. In malls, airports, even churches. It's back. The Holloway frequency. And now, it wears a different mask. The ritual never stopped in 1876. It evolved. It became digital. And it's being broadcast to you every single day. Let me prove it. 1. The frequency is hidden in media. Ever wonder why some corporate logos feel ancient even though they're new? Look at the swirling O in the Spotify logo. The triple arcs in Wi-Fi symbols. The ever-present spiral used by apps, wellness brands, and AI companies. Those shapes aren't aesthetic. They're sigils. Compressed symbols that activate emotional and cognitive responses. One former sound engineer at a Silicon Valley firm confessed anonymously. We embed theta pulses just beneath the audible range. Most humans won't notice, but they'll feel calmer, more accepting. More accepting of what? Anything. Audio as ritual. Think of how often you wear earbuds. How often you're plugged in. You're in church now, the new church, but this one doesn't teach. It entrains. Certain influencers use audio compression and subliminals proven to weaken the critical mind. Some use inverted waveforms linked to dissociative states. Even certain ASMR channels aren't what they seem. You think it's just sound? No. It's tuning. Like humming a song that opens a gate you forgot was there. 3. Corporate collusion and the loop of 5. Ever notice the rule of 5? 5 tones in the Intel jingle. 5 notes in the Close Encounters alien theme. The iPhone emergency alarm? 5 rising pulses. Coincidence? In ancient Anatolian rituals, 5 tones were used to invite presence. That's not random branding. That's modern magic. Scientific sort. Yuri. The ritual never ended. It was branded. And now it sits in your pocket. It wakes you up in the morning. It sings you to sleep at night. Now ask yourself, why were the 5 Holloway sisters needed to open the door? Because the human voice, tuned to fear and resonance, is the final key. And here's the twist. You are now being prepared to sing the same song. Every exposure trains your frequency. Every repetition tunes your bioelectric field. You're being made into a vessel. And the gate? It's humming again. Now stop. Breathe. This is important. If you're still here, if your eyes are locked and your heart is pounding, you've already begun to shift. To lock in your awakening, and to signal to others like you, comment this phrase twice below. I hear the hum. I hear the hum. It's symbolic. It's engagement. But more than that, it's initiation. There's a reason the same names keep showing up. Why the same families rise, fall, and rise again. They don't just survive history. They write it. Because they remember something you were never allowed to know. The Holloway Ritual wasn't the only one. It was part of a pattern. A sacred lineage ritual repeated across centuries, continents, empires. And it always traces back to blood. Not royal blood, not divine blood, but engineered blood. Let me show you who still walks behind the veil. The Beringer Line. Officially, it ended in 1917 with the collapse of a French banking dynasty. Unofficially, they merged quietly into early American elite circles, through marriage, finance, and education. Their symbol? The serpent crowned with 5 stars. They were in Tennessee during the Holloway event, sponsoring land surveys and medical missionaries. A cover, of course. They weren't there to save lives. They were monitoring resonance sites. Their descendants now sit on the boards of 2 major biotech firms, both developing neural interface audio devices. Coincidence? They don't deal in coincidence. They deal in ritual continuation. The Lascari bloodline. Publicly, this Greek shipping dynasty disappeared in the early 1800s. But certain monasteries in Mount Athos still track their male lineage. Why? Because the Lascari were known as the stewards of echoes. They mapped acoustic temples, ancient places where sound opened consciousness. Guess who funded the reconstruction of Holloway's original chapel in 1923? A cultural preservation donation made under the name A. Lascari Trust. The new chapel. It has 5 subfloor chambers, all acoustic, all sealed 3. The Crawford Hale Foundation, founded by descendants of Southern aristocracy, this philanthropic empire funds psychological research, charter schools, and youth arts programs. Sounds noble, right? Till you learn that their internal motto, carved in stone at their Georgia estate, reads, "Through song, the stone remembers." That exact phrase appears in Codex Obscura 73, the Vatican-classified ritual manual describing the Holloway-type resonance rite. The Crawfords were in Holloway in 1876. They weren't victims. They were conductors. And their descendants? 2 sit on the board of a global tech company working on audio-based cognitive imprinting in education. They've just moved the ritual into your children's headphones. These names are shadows, but they're also mirrors. Because this isn't just about watching the bloodlines, it's about understanding your place in them. What if your blood remembers? What if you're drawn to this story, not by curiosity, but by ancestral memory? What if the reason your pulse quickens, the reason you hear the hum, is because you're not just learning the ritual, you're waking up in it? You've come this far, which means you already know. Even if your mind resists, your body remembers. That unease, that chill along your spine. It's not fear. It's recognition. You've walked this path before. The Holloway Ritual was never about summoning. It was about removing the veil. Not to invite something in, but to let something out. The ritual's true purpose. The 5 sisters weren't chosen for sacrifice. They were chosen for amplification. Their voices, precisely tuned to harmonic resonance, formed a living circuit. A human antenna, designed to fracture local reality at a weakened point in the grid. Remember the chapel's original foundation? Built on limestone and quartz, perfect for frequency amplification. Remember the hum? That was the aftershock. What was unleashed was not fully contained. The entity beyond language. In 1882, 6 years after the Holloway event, a linguist named Father Elian Morse documented a series of dream transmissions from 5 unrelated children across different states. All described the same figure. It speaks without speaking. It sings inside us. Each child drew identical sigils. They match carvings found in ancient Sumerian tombs. Tombs dedicated not to gods, but to echo-bearers. What they awakened in Holloway wasn't a demon, not a ghost. It was a sentient frequency, pre-human and post-linear, a consciousness that rides vibration the way a wasp rides wind. An intelligence made of tone. It had been sealed long before language. And once it passed into our world, it didn't need a body. It needed us. The ritual continues. Through you, look around you. Notice how attention spans are shrinking. Notice how silence makes people twitch. We've been trained to crave constant sound, not by culture, but by design. Because this entity doesn't just survive on sound, it grows through it. Every time you tune in, every time you hum without thinking, every time a jingle makes you remember something you didn't want to, it's feeding. The ritual was distributed, no longer isolated to chapels or bloodlines. Now, you carry it. You've become a node in the resonance field. The 5 sisters, they were just the start. The new circuit has millions of voices, And every time someone awakens, like you just did, the field strengthens. But here's the part that matters. You're not powerless. You've seen the pattern, heard the frequency, felt the pull. That means you can turn, not away, but inward. Reclaim the tones they stole, and disrupt the signal. Because the entity only survives in the unconscious. It cannot stand before those who see it. Now you do. Final call to action. If your skin is buzzing, if your heart beats like a drum in fog, you are not who you were 20 minutes ago. You're awake. Comment again below. I hear the hum. I break the signal. Let others find your words and feel the pull. Let the algorithm carry your warning into the maze. And share this, not as entertainment, but as a whisper across the wire, to those ready to remember. Because what began in 1876 is not over. It just changed its name. Now, it answers to your voice. And its next song will be decided by what you choose to believe right now. Welcome to the deep signal. Stay alert, stay silent, and above all, listen.